I rented the house for Halloween week because it looked like something out of a classic horror film. It sat at the end of a quiet suburban street in Illinois, surrounded by yards filled with plastic skeletons and glowing pumpkins. Every house on the block was decorated except this one. Its porch light was dead, and the wooden swing out front rocked slowly in the wind. The owner said he hadn't lived there for years but didn't mind renting it for the holiday. He mentioned something about the neighborhood kids never coming near it after dark, which I thought was just small-town superstition. Inside, the place smelled like dust and faintly of old wood polish. The wallpaper was faded, and the air had that still heaviness of a place left untouched for too long. I unpacked upstairs, choosing the master bedroom that faced the cul-de-sac. Outside, I could see children trick-or-treating under streetlights, their costumes glowing under porch bulbs. The laughter and chatter from the street made me feel oddly isolated inside. I remember thinking how strange it was. So much life outside, and yet this house felt completely detached from it. As night settled deeper, I dimmed the lights and scrolled on my phone while lying in bed. The neighborhood grew quiet except for the occasional car passing by. Around 1 in the morning, I heard a noise, a slow, dragging step across the hallway outside my door. I froze, trying to convince myself it was just the house settling, but the sound came again, steady and deliberate. The floorboards creaked one at a time, stopping right outside my room. I held my breath, my phone screen casting a dim glow across the ceiling. Nothing moved. For a moment, I thought maybe I had imagined it. Then I heard what sounded like a soft exhale on the other side of the door, barely audible but close enough to chill me to the bone. I wanted to call out, but the words caught in my throat. I waited, listening, every nerve in my body tense. The silence stretched on for nearly a minute before the footsteps slowly retreated down the hallway. I got up, grabbed my flashlight, and opened the door. The hallway was empty, lined with fake cobwebs I had hung earlier. They swayed slightly even though no windows were open. I checked every room upstairs but found nothing. The air felt colder, heavier, as if something unseen had just left. I went downstairs and noticed one of the front pumpkins I'd placed on the porch was cracked open, like someone had stomped on it. The other decorations were gone, scattered across the yard. It didn't make sense. No one was outside. I tried laughing it off, telling myself some kids were pulling a late Halloween prank. But when I checked my phone later, I saw a motion alert from the hallway camera I'd installed earlier that evening. The timestamp read 1:12 a.m., exactly when I heard those footsteps. The clip showed nothing, just the empty hallway. But halfway through, the camera flickered and the hallway light dimmed for a split second, like something had passed right in front of it. I replayed the footage 3 times, hoping to find an explanation. Each time, that flicker sent a chill through me. I turned off my phone, trying to sleep again, but the silence felt alive now, as if the house itself was listening. It was my first night there, and already I was starting to wonder if renting that place for Halloween had been a mistake. The next morning, I tried to shake off the unease from that night. Sunlight streamed through the dusty blinds, and for a moment it almost felt normal. But when I looked down the hallway, I noticed something strange. The cobwebs I'd hung had been torn down completely. Bits of the fake webbing were stuck to the floor, as if someone had brushed past them roughly. I went to check the porch, where the smashed pumpkins still sat on the steps. The others I'd arranged were missing entirely. My neighbor, an older woman raking leaves across the street, waved and said, "Didn't think anyone stayed there anymore." When I asked what she meant, she told me no one had rented that house for Halloween since what happened a few years ago. She didn't elaborate, just went back to her yard. The way she said it lingered with me all day. I kept replaying the camera footage, slowing it frame by frame, but there was nothing. No shape, no blur, no reflection, just that flicker, like a light pulse. I started to think maybe it was an electrical issue. Still, every creak and sigh of the house made me jump. That evening, I decided to leave a hallway light on just in case. By nightfall, the neighborhood felt alive again with Halloween energy. Kids' laughter echoed from the nearby streets, but the house itself seemed sealed off from it. I sat on the couch with a blanket and tried watching a movie to distract myself. The air vents rattled occasionally, and I kept glancing toward the stairs, half expecting to hear those steps again. Around 11, the motion sensor light outside flicked on. I walked to the front window and peeked through the blinds. Nothing. No kids, no movement, just the cold air blowing leaves across the driveway. When I turned back toward the living room, something small caught my eye. One of the missing pumpkins was sitting inside the front hallway, right on the floor by the stairs. It hadn't been there minutes earlier. I hadn't brought it in. The carved face looked warped, like it had softened and sagged overnight. I knelt to look closer and noticed muddy footprints leading away from it, faint but visible on the hardwood. They stopped halfway down the hall as though whoever made them simply vanished. I followed the footprints carefully, feeling the boards creak beneath me. Every step echoed faintly up the staircase. The air smelled damp again, and I could hear a soft tapping from somewhere above, maybe the attic. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until my flashlight beam landed on the ceiling hatch. The tapping stopped instantly. I stood there for a while, unsure what to do. My mind told me to leave it alone, but curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed a chair, climbed up, and pushed open the hatch. Cold air rushed out, thick with dust. I aimed my light around and saw nothing but old boxes and insulation. Then, something moved, quick, a shadow darting behind a beam. I froze, waiting, but whatever it was didn't move again. I shut the hatch and stepped down, my pulse hammering. I told myself it was probably an animal, but deep down, I knew the sound I heard wasn't scurrying. It was footsteps. As I turned to head back to the living room, I noticed something new at the top of the stairs. A small candy wrapper, the kind you'd hand out on Halloween night, crumpled neatly in the middle of the step. I hadn't brought any candy into the house. That night, I couldn't bring myself to sleep upstairs. I stayed on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the hallway where that pumpkin had been. The silence stretched so deep it felt unnatural, like the house was listening for me to move. Around 2 a.m., the hallway light began to flicker again, steady, rhythmic, almost in time with my heartbeat. I reached for my phone, checking the camera feed. The screen showed the empty hallway, same as before, until the image stuttered. For half a second, there was something standing at the far end, a shape, too tall to be a person but faint enough to doubt my own eyes. When the picture cleared, it was gone, but the light overhead still pulsed weakly. The air turned colder. My breath fogged in the dim glow as I set the phone down. Then came the sound. Soft, dragging footsteps again, this time coming from the living room entrance. They paused just beyond the edge of light, as if whoever or whatever it was knew exactly where to stop so I couldn't see them. I wanted to run out the front door, but something about the stillness rooted me in place. My hand trembled as I pointed the flashlight toward the sound. The beam swept over the entryway and caught movement, a door upstairs slowly closing on its own. I hadn't opened any doors earlier. The quiet click echoed through the entire house. I climbed the stairs, one step at a time, forcing myself to breathe. Every board under my feet complained. The hallway stretched longer than I remembered, the shadows heavier. When I reached the top, the bedroom door at the end was half open. I pushed it slowly and found the window wide open, curtains moving in the night air. The street outside was silent now. Every porch light across the block had gone dark, as if the entire neighborhood had fallen asleep at once. I could see my own reflection in the window glass, and behind me, faintly, the shape of someone standing in the doorway. I spun around instantly, light shaking, but the hall was empty. My heart wouldn't stop racing. I ran downstairs, grabbed my bag, and headed for the front door. The pumpkins on the porch were all back in place, perfectly arranged, candles flickering inside them even though I'd never lit them. The smell of smoke and wax filled the air, heavy and old. I didn't even look back as I stepped outside. I drove off without locking up, watching the house disappear in my rearview mirror. The street looked normal again, kids' decorations still hanging, lights glowing faintly. But when I checked my phone at a red light, the hallway camera was still connected. The feed showed the empty hallway. Until a few seconds later, the same shape stepped into frame and turned toward the camera. I deleted the feed and never went back. The owner texted days later asking if I'd left the porch pumpkins burning all night. I never replied. Sometimes I still wake up at 1:12 a.m., sure I can hear those same slow footsteps in the hallway outside my room. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Halloween night had always been noisy in our neighborhood, but that year felt different. The streets were crowded with kids, laughter echoing down the cul-de-sac, yet our house sat oddly quiet. My parents had put up some simple decorations, fake cobwebs, plastic bats, and a pumpkin on the porch. Around 7, we turned off the lights inside to let the orange glow from outside fill the living room. It was supposed to be just another normal Halloween. The first doorbell ring came around 8 o'clock. I figured it was trick-or-treaters, so I grabbed the candy bowl and opened the door. No one was there. The wind pushed a few leaves past my feet, and the street beyond the driveway looked empty. I remember calling out "Happy Halloween" as a joke, expecting kids to pop out from the bushes. But nothing moved. It felt off. I shut the door and shrugged it off, thinking maybe they rang the wrong house. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang again. My mom laughed from the couch and said, "You're getting your workout tonight." But when I opened the door again, still, no one was there. The same empty porch, the same flickering pumpkin, the same uneasy stillness in the air. My dad decided to check the doorbell camera. He rewound the footage while I handed out candy to the few kids who came by. When I looked over, he had stopped the video and was just staring at the screen. "What is it?" I asked. He turned the tablet toward me. There was a man standing at the end of the driveway, tall, thin, wearing dark clothes. He wasn't moving, just standing there, facing the house. The next ring came 10 minutes later. This time, I didn't open the door right away. My dad watched the live feed while I stood beside him. The same man was there again, a little closer now, halfway up the driveway. He wasn't walking or waving, just standing perfectly still. His face was hard to make out, but there was something off about how long his arms seemed, hanging loosely by his sides. Mom wanted to call the police, but Dad said maybe it was just someone messing around. "Teenagers," he said, trying to scare people. But even he didn't sound convinced. The doorbell rang again, louder this time, as if pressed harder. Dad paused the feed. The man was at the bottom of the porch steps now, head tilted slightly toward the camera. We decided to turn off the porch light and stop answering the door. My younger sister came downstairs asking why we weren't giving out candy anymore. We told her the bowl was empty, but she didn't believe us. She peeked through the curtain and whispered, "He's still there." None of us moved for a while. The next time the doorbell rang, it didn't sound like a prank anymore. It sounded patient. I could feel it, the tension in the room, the way no one wanted to look at the screen again. My dad muted the camera feed and told us to just ignore it. But I couldn't stop glancing toward the front door, imagining him just standing there in the dark, closer each time. The street outside had gone completely quiet. No laughter, no footsteps. Just the faint creak of our porch swing moving on its own. We tried to act normal after that, but the atmosphere in the house had changed. My mom muted the TV, saying she heard something outside. The sound was faint at first, like footsteps moving slowly across gravel. I leaned closer to the window, but the blinds were too thick to see through. The wind picked up again, whistling between the cracks of the door. My dad whispered for everyone to stay quiet. The sound of those steps stopped right in front of our porch. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then came a single knock, slow, deliberate, and heavy. It wasn't a doorbell anymore. It felt more like someone knocking just to remind us they were still there. Mom called 911 while Dad kept his eyes on the tablet. But the feed had gone black. The screen flickered with static, then froze completely. "He's jamming it," my dad muttered under his breath. My sister started crying softly. The operator told my mom that an officer was already nearby and would check on us soon. The knock came again, 3 slow taps that seemed to echo through the whole house. I swear I could hear breathing outside the door. My dad motioned for everyone to move to the kitchen quietly. We huddled behind the counter while the knocking continued in intervals, like whoever it was enjoyed the silence in between. Then for a few minutes, it all stopped. The house fell into absolute stillness. The only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator. Dad grabbed the baseball bat from the garage and whispered that he was going to check the door. Mom begged him not to, but he ignored her and crept forward. Every step he took made the floor creak louder than it should have. He opened the front door slowly, just a few inches. The porch was empty again. The pumpkin's candle had burned out, leaving the front steps barely visible in the dark. He stepped out onto the porch, bat in hand, scanning the yard and driveway. That's when we saw something move near the bushes. A quick flash of black slipping out of sight. Dad backed inside quickly, locking the door and turning the deadbolt twice. "He's hiding out there," he said, his voice shaking now. Mom tried to reassure him, but her hands were trembling too. My sister held on to me, asking why the police weren't here yet. That's when we heard it. A scraping sound against the side of the house. It started near the front window and dragged all the way to the back. The noise was slow, like metal brushing against siding. Dad ran to check the backyard door while I stayed near the living room, frozen. The scraping stopped suddenly, followed by a single thud that made the floor vibrate. None of us wanted to see what caused it. The police siren finally broke through the silence. Red and blue lights flashed across the windows, and I felt this wave of relief wash over me. My dad opened the door for the officers, explaining everything quickly. They checked the porch, the bushes, and the backyard, but found nothing, not a single footprint, just silence and the cold Halloween air. After the police left, the house felt colder than before. My parents tried to act like everything was fine, but nobody believed it. My dad left the porch light on and said it was probably just some Halloween prank gone too far. Still, I noticed he kept glancing toward the front door every few minutes. Around midnight, I was scrolling through my phone trying to distract myself. That's when I heard it again, the doorbell. I froze, staring at the hallway that led to the front entrance. My heart started pounding as my dad's voice came from the living room. "Don't move!" The tone in his voice was sharper this time. He looked at the tablet again, and his expression went blank. "It's him," he whispered. I walked closer and saw the screen. The same tall man stood there, but now he was on the porch steps. His mask was cracked down the middle, exposing part of his face. He wasn't wearing the same coat anymore either. It looked darker, heavier, like it was wet. Dad shouted through the door, telling him to leave before he called the police again. The man didn't move. He just stood there, head tilted slightly to one side, the porch light flickering above him. The air inside the house felt thick, like even breathing too loudly might draw his attention closer. The doorbell rang again, then again. Each press was slower than the last, like he wanted to make sure we heard every single one. My mom grabbed the phone, but before she could dial, the doorbell feed glitched and cut out completely. The screen turned black for a few seconds, then came back, but now it was zoomed in on his face. We could see his eye through the crack in the mask. He was staring directly into the camera, not blinking once. For a moment, it almost felt like he could see us through the screen. My sister ran upstairs crying, and my mom followed after her. My dad locked every window and told me to get away from the door. I listened. Minutes passed without another sound. The man was gone from the camera feed. My dad peeked through the curtains just once, then sat back down with the bat in his hands. The house was silent again, except for the faint ticking of the living room clock. I almost convinced myself it was over. But just as the clock struck 1, there was a single loud ring at the door. My dad jumped up and checked the feed again. The screen showed nothing this time, only our empty porch. Then, from the side window, we saw movement. The same tall man was now walking down the street slowly, disappearing into the dark. That night, none of us slept. The next morning, when the sun came up, my dad checked the front porch. There were muddy shoe prints leading up to the door, but none leading away. The police never found anyone, and the camera stopped working entirely after that. I still live in that house, and every Halloween night the doorbell rings once at midnight. I always thought sneaking into that old house on Birch Lane was just a dumb Halloween tradition. My friends and I had been doing it since high school, every October 31st, right after trick-or-treating ended. The place had been empty for decades, its windows boarded, its yard overgrown with weeds. But that was part of what made it exciting. Each year we'd dare each other to stay inside for a few minutes longer than the last. We never broke anything or caused trouble. It was just the thrill of being inside somewhere we shouldn't be. The smell of damp wood and dust filled the air every time we pushed the door open. There was always that same uneasy silence inside, like the whole house was holding its breath. Last Halloween felt no different at first. I remember we parked a few houses down so no one would see us. The sky was overcast, and the wind carried that crisp, dry chill that only comes in late October. We laughed quietly, trying not to spook each other as we walked up the cracked driveway, flashlights shaking in our hands. There were 4 of us that night: me, Ryan, Emily, and Jake. We'd all gone our separate ways after high school, but every Halloween we came back to the same town for this one tradition. It was stupid, I know, but there was something nostalgic about it. Like we were chasing the last bit of our teenage years before life fully moved on. As soon as Ryan pushed the front door open, that same familiar creak echoed through the hall. Dust swirled in the beam of my flashlight, and the faint smell of old leaves filled the air. Emily laughed nervously, brushing cobwebs from her jacket. "It smells worse every year," she whispered. The floorboards groaned under our feet as we stepped deeper inside. The living room still had that sagging couch covered with a dusty sheet, and the old fireplace looked untouched since forever. The silence felt heavier this time though, thicker somehow, like the air itself was listening to us. Jake joked about ghosts again, but no one laughed. Something about the atmosphere didn't feel right. The cold in the house wasn't just from the temperature, it felt like it was coming from the walls themselves. I remember turning to Ryan and saying, "It feels different this year." He nodded but didn't say anything. We walked toward the back hallway where the wallpaper peeled off in long, curling strips. There used to be a back door there, but years ago it had been sealed shut. The strange part was I could see faint light coming from underneath it, like someone had a candle lit behind the boards. Emily froze when she saw it too. "Guys," she said quietly, "was that always there?" None of us answered. For the first time in all the years we'd come here, the house didn't feel abandoned anymore. Ryan was the first to move closer to the light. His shoes scraped against the dusty floorboards, echoing through the house louder than they should have. "Maybe it's just a reflection," he said, trying to sound confident. But I could tell by the way his voice shook that he didn't believe that either. Jake grabbed a broom from the corner and tapped the boarded door lightly. The faint light flickered, then went out. Emily gasped and grabbed my arm. For a few seconds, none of us moved. The silence that followed was so deep, I could hear the faint ticking of my watch. Then we heard it. Soft, deliberate footsteps from the other side of that sealed door. They moved slowly, one step at a time, like someone pacing just inches away. We all froze in place. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would echo in the room. Ryan whispered, "Who's there?" His voice cracked halfway through the question. No answer came, just another slow shuffle, then another. Jake backed up, gripping the broom handle tighter, but he didn't dare swing it. Emily's breathing turned shallow as she whispered, "Let's just go." We started backing away when a loud thud hit the door from the other side. The boards rattled, dust falling from the frame. The light blinked back on, brighter this time, flickering as if someone was moving behind it. None of us said a word. We just stared, waiting for something to happen next. Ryan finally snapped. "That's it, I'm done," he muttered, turning toward the front of the house. But before he could take another step, the sound of slow, uneven footsteps began again, this time from upstairs. We all turned our flashlights upward. The staircase had always been too unstable to climb, but now it looked different. The boards seemed freshly disturbed, footprints pressed into the dust. Emily whispered, "Did you guys ever go up there?" We all shook our heads. None of us had ever dared. The footsteps grew louder, closer to the top of the stairs, and then stopped. I could see a faint shape in the dark, a shoulder maybe, or a head leaning slightly forward. I blinked, and it was gone. "We should leave," I said quietly. Jake nodded immediately. As we turned toward the door, something else caught my eye. Hanging on the wall by the staircase was an old framed photo covered in grime. I wiped it with my sleeve, revealing 4 faces, 3 men and 1 woman. But the strangest part? The woman looked exactly like Emily. Emily stepped back from the photo like it burned her. "That's not funny," she whispered, her voice trembling. None of us said anything because we all saw it clearly. It wasn't just a resemblance, it was her. Same face, same faint scar above her eyebrow, everything. The photo looked decades old. Ryan reached out and pulled the frame off the wall. Behind it, there was a faint outline of something square, carved into the plaster. Jake ran his hand along it and realized it was a small door, no bigger than a kitchen cabinet. "What the hell is this?" he said, leaning closer. Before anyone could answer, that slow, dragging step came again, this time from right behind us. We turned around instantly, flashlights shaking. The hallway looked empty, but the air felt wrong, like someone had just walked through, brushing past us. Ryan whispered, "We're leaving." Now no one argued. We made our way toward the front door as fast as the creaking floorboards allowed. But when we reached it, the door wouldn't budge. The handle turned freely, but the frame felt jammed, like something heavy was pressing against it from the other side. Emily started crying quietly, her flashlight beam trembling across the walls. I turned toward the staircase again and froze. At the top stood a tall, thin man wearing what looked like an old suit. His face was obscured by shadow, but I could make out the faint glint of eyes watching us. He didn't move, didn't make a sound, just stood there, still as stone, like he had been waiting all along. The house suddenly felt smaller, tighter, as if the walls were closing in on us. Jake whispered, "He's not real," but his voice cracked halfway through. The man began to descend the stairs, one slow step at a time. The floor creaked beneath his weight. Ryan yanked the door again, this time throwing his shoulder into it, and it burst open. Cold air rushed in as we stumbled out into the front yard, nearly tripping over each other. We didn't stop running until we reached the car. Ryan sped off so fast the tires squealed on the pavement. When we finally looked back, the house was dark again, like nothing had ever happened. Emily sat in the back seat, clutching the old photograph we hadn't noticed her take. A week later, Ryan called me. He sounded shaken. He said he drove by the house earlier that day and there were lights on upstairs. He swore he saw the same tall man standing in the window, staring straight at the street as if he'd been expecting someone. This year, Halloween's coming up again. Jake moved away, Emily doesn't talk about that night anymore, and Ryan refuses to drive down Birch Lane. But every time I pass that part of town, I still glance toward that house. Sometimes when I slow down, I swear I see movement in the windows. I told myself I'd never go back there again, but lately, I've been having dreams, standing in that same hallway, staring at that photo. Only this time, there's another person in the picture. He looks a lot like me, and he's smiling.